Could the U.S. lose all its flights to China? The country has enacted strict travel restrictions due to a surge of virus cases, while Hong Kong's status as a transit point for international flight passengers may be a thing of the past. Taiwan ramps up its defense. Now the island's navy is equipped with new vessels, installed with automated mine-deploying systems. Over 100 people who practice Falun Gong died in China last year, including an 80-year-old man. Beijing's persecution of the peaceful meditation system is now coming into its 23rd year. A sudden lockdown order leaves one woman stuck in a stranger's home after a blind date. A string of social media posts detail the days-long date. And a promotional campaign from KFC in China is a little too successful. The American fast food chain is now facing a state-backed clampdown. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. First up, a look at China's trade roundup. The nation seems to have sold much more than it bought last year, with 2021 exports outpacing imports more than ever before. About a third of its trade surplus is tied to the U.S. Most surprising, that figure moves in the opposite direction to what the U.S.-China trade deal set out to achieve.
China posted a record trade surplus in December and in 2021. That's according to official data released Friday. A surplus of $676.4 billion last year was the highest since records began in 1950. In December, the positive trade balance rose to $94 billion, another record-breaking total and well above analysts' forecasts. Around a third of that surplus is with the US alone, potentially stoking tensions between the two nations. Overseas shipments rose by a touch over a fifth year-on-year last month, which was slightly down from November's gain. That as a surge in demand for goods eased overseas and exporters faced higher costs and the rapid spread of Omicron. Imports were also up just under 20% in December, though this was well below forecasts. The data gave some support to the yuan, with the currency set for its biggest weekly gains in 2 months. Some analysts have, however, warned that the health crisis and turmoil in the country's property sector could yet hurt this year's outlook. Markets will now look to Monday, when China releases GDP data for the fourth quarter.
China's Commerce Ministry said on Thursday that it hopes the United States can create the conditions to expand trade cooperation. This after China bought far fewer U.S. goods in the past 2 years than China had promised in a trade deal made during the Trump administration. The competition between the U.S. and China doesn't stop at exports. Competition over technology is heating up too. The Chinese regime published a major plan to boost its global competitiveness in the digital economy before 2025. And at the same time, the U.S. is moving forward with a bill to increase competition with China. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
China's State Council Wednesday published its 14th five-year plan on the digital economy. It covers everything from communications to e-commerce.
The digital economy is the backbone of the CCP's digital totalitarianism. They must vigorously develop it. Digital technology is the core of U.S.-China technological competition, and it is impossible for the CCP to give it up.
The plan says China must seize the opportunities offered by the digital economy to reorganize global resources and reshape global economic structure. Stephen Ezel from the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation says digitalization is really driving the entire global economy today.
Research analysts at the firm IDC estimate that by the end of this year, fully 60% of global GDP will be digitized, meaning largely impacted by the use of digital tools across a range of traditional industries, from agriculture to manufacturing to finance.
The document includes 11 chapters focusing on different areas. For example, China will improve the digital transformation of its supply chain in key industries, such as 5G, artificial intelligence, and the industrial internet. Apart from AI and 5G, Ezel thinks quantum computing is another area where China will considerably close the gap with U.S. leadership.
Perhaps not so much on the device side, but certainly with regard to quantum applications, such as quantum cryptography,
Beijing's digital and technological ambitions have stoked fears in the U.S. After the Senate passed a China competitiveness bill called the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act last year, the House is preparing to move forward.
If the House includes these various sub-pieces of USICA, you would see an awful lot of strengthening of U.S. policy towards China on everything from export controls to accessing financial markets to partnerships with university research activities, etc.
Ezel thinks we'll see the U.S.-China contest for tech leadership take even more of the headlines in the year ahead. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
U.S. travelers to China may soon face a tough scenario. There are likely to be no flights between the two countries starting next week. According to CNN Business, China's aviation regulators have canceled or suspended all flights from the U.S. to China beginning January 19th. And this will continue for at least 2 weeks. The move comes just ahead of the Winter Olympics, with Beijing anxious to keep virus infections at bay. Games participants will mostly take special flights. Since June, China's aviation sector has enforced a special rule on all international flights. The rule suspends a flight for 2 weeks if 5 or more passengers test positive when they land in China. On Wednesday, the Biden administration criticized China's decision to continue canceling the flights and warned it could take action in response. A U.S. Department of Transportation spokesperson says China's actions violated their air travel agreements. The Chinese embassy in Washington did not immediately comment. China has largely sealed off its borders to maintain its strict zero-COVID policy. Flights have been drastically cut back to and from China, the world's second biggest air travel market after the U.S. That's even as international travel has picked up in other parts of the world. Now, Hong Kong appears to be following China's lead in travel control. On Thursday, the city's airport authority announced a ban on transit passengers. It says anyone staying in a high-risk country in the last 21 days will not be allowed to use Hong Kong as a transit point. That means travelers from over 150 countries will be affected by the new measures, including the U.S. Hong Kong classifies any country outside mainland China or Taiwan with the Omicron virus variant as a high-risk country. Taiwan is loading up on new mine-deploying vessels, and it's not hard to see why. On Friday, the Taiwanese Navy commissioned 2 new mine layers designed to lay small, powerful mines at high speed.
The purpose of our mining operations squadron is to build up asymmetric warfare power. Our target is to deter the enemy from getting on our island.
Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen attended the commissioning ceremony on Friday for the new ships. During wartime, their mission is to quickly lay minefields in the path of the invading fleet. Now, with the new mine layers, this can be done automatically without the need for divers.
In the past, mine-laying operations were performed by Navy servicemen on board a landing craft. The mines were laid manually. Besides the low speed of mine-laying, the operations were made difficult each time the weather conditions were bad.
Taiwan's Navy ordered 4 mine layers to be built by Taiwanese shipbuilding company Longte. 2 of them have been commissioned so far. The order is part of Tsai's effort to revitalize the domestic arms industry and reduce Taiwan's dependence on the U.S.
I believe that with the creation of this mining operations squadron, the Navy will have even stronger power in protecting our waters. With the commissioning of the squadrons today, we have once again demonstrated the fruits of the indigenous defense industry and showed the world our determination to defend our country.
Beijing claims Taiwan as its own territory and has stepped up threats to conquer the island by force. With no match for Chinese warships, the Taiwanese fleet is hoping that underwater minefields can help to fend off a possible invasion. More preparation for a worst-case scenario between China and Taiwan, training frogmen, Taiwan's version of the U.S. Navy SEALs. The grueling training has a clear goal: to strengthen their willpower and ready them for any possible situation.
All that stands between 26-year-old Wu Yuwei and joining Taiwan's Navy elite is a 100-meter path of jagged rocks known to soldiers as the road to heaven. But the only way to his dream and the finish line is to crawl. It marks the end of what trainees call Hell Week, the last of 10 weeks of a grueling course that decides who becomes a frogman, Taiwan's version of a U.S. Navy SEAL. They're already soldiers, but frogman training is completely voluntary. They're driven to train up for the unit out of patriotism and a desire to push their personal limits.
The first 3 days of Hell Week are very exhausting, but during the last few days it will get better after your body gets used to it. But of course you have to rely on your willpower and determination.
Life as a frogman isn't for the faint of heart. Neighboring China claims self-ruled Taiwan as its own and has stepped up military and political pressure on the island. Should a war break out, Taiwan's frogmen could be spirited across the strait in the middle of the night to scout enemy locations and call in attacks. 4 hours at a time, frogman hopefuls have to endure everything from treading water in full combat gear to taxing physical exercises. Some fade in and out of consciousness. Blasts of cold water from a hose jolts them back to their senses. Drill Sergeant Chen Shou Li says there is a method to the madness.
The main reason for being so harsh on them is to train their willpower. Because our unit belongs to the special forces, in times of war we need to have stronger willpower and be more physically capable than other units.
Less than half of this batch of trainees made it to the final stretch, the rocky road to heaven. For days, they've barely slept. But waiting on the other side are their families and a badge that says these soldiers are the best of the best. With his own badge in hand, 30-year-old Fu Yu says he is not afraid of death. He says he would undoubtedly give up his life for Taiwan.
China and India are grappling with the stalemate at their shared border. For the second time in 3 months, China and India held talks focused on easing military tensions at the border. But like in the past, the most recent meetings did not yield a breakthrough. During the Wednesday meeting, an Indian army chief called the situation at the border in eastern Ladakh stable, but added that India will continue its tough approach on dealing with Beijing's People's Liberation Army.
While we will continue to deal with the PLA in a firm and resolute manner,
he also touched on another subject, upgrading local infrastructure. He explained that upgrades are being made on India's side of the northern border, including roads, tunnels, railway lines, bridges, and oil storage facilities. In response, China's foreign ministry spokesperson described the Indian general's words as unconstructive comments. India and China's shared border spans thousands of miles. Part of it remains unsettled territory. Tens of thousands of troops from both sides are stationed on each side, complete with artillery, tanks, and fighter jets. From time to time, skirmishes have broken out. In 2020, tensions erupted into one such clash. 20 Indian soldiers were killed. China suffered casualties too, but didn't reveal the number of troops it lost. The latest round of commander-level military talks dates back to last October. That's when China accused India of insisting on unreasonable and unrealistic demands and making the situation more difficult. India and China's continued territory dispute has also spilled over to neighboring nations. Tied into the issue, Beijing has been looking to seize land in the country of Bhutan. To do it, China has hastened efforts to build up settlements along the border they share since 2020. Satellite image analysis supplied by U.S. data analytics firm Hawkeye 360 revealed more than 200 structures built in 6 locations. China's construction surrounds an area called Biyul. Beijing has been using its claim of the area as a bargaining chip since the 90s. Here's Beijing's offer. If Bhutan gives Beijing a big piece of land on its west border, then Beijing would give up its claim of Biyul. That piece of land on the west is crucial for Beijing, as it sits just over 60 miles from one of India's geographic weak points, what India calls its chicken neck, the strip of land that joins the bulk of the country with its northeastern territory. Closer access to the area through Bhutan could give the Chinese regime an upper hand in its military competition with India. At least 103 Falun Gong practitioners died in China last year after they were tortured. This, according to the U.S.-based Falun Gong information website Minhui.org. Falun Gong is a spiritual practice rooted in Chinese tradition. It features 5 slow-moving meditative exercises and is guided by the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. 2 decades ago, the Chinese Communist Party launched a campaign against the practice, and millions have been detained, tortured, and killed in China since then. Here are the stories of just a few of the practitioners who lost their lives to the persecution last year. Liu Xiyong died last month at age 80. Liu is from northeastern China's Liaoning province. He was already 77 when he was sentenced to 3 years in prison in 2018. That's because he had been trying to expose the communist regime's persecution of the meditation practice. After he was released last year, he was again sentenced to another 4 years in prison. Liu became seriously ill in prison due to his mistreatment. But because he refused to denounce his faith, he was refused temporary release for medical treatment. He died in December 2021 when he was 80. Another Falun Gong practitioner, Lü Songming from Hunan province, was sentenced 3 times for a combined total of 14 years in prison because he refused to give up his faith. In prison, they suspended his body with ropes for many hours at a time, and he was beaten with an electric baton. His teeth fell off after he was injured and was left with only 6 teeth on his release. He was tortured until he had severe heart failure and died in March last year at the age of 53. Lu had been a school teacher and a Courage Award recipient before the regime began persecuting Falun Gong practitioners in 1999. According to Minghui, similar incidents have been recorded in every province and region across the country. Now for an update on Omicron. So far, the highly contagious variant has found its way into 7 Chinese provinces and municipalities: Tianjin, Guangdong, Hunan, Henan, Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Liaoning. In an effort to block virus spread, Wuhan issued an abrupt order on Tuesday. It closed 4 highways and 4 national highways connecting Henan province to the city of Xi'an. A Wuhan resident told U.S.-based media Radio Free Asia that control measures inside Wuhan are tightening. For example, residents must provide their health code results, part of China's contact tracing system, before being admitted to the hospital. On top of that, inspection points have been set up along certain roads. The resident explained these tactics aim to prevent virus spread from Henan. China's first Omicron case appeared in Tianjin. As part of its latest control measures, officials have opted to shut down schools, meaning those living on campuses are blocked from leaving, except under special permission. Those looking to enter the campus must go through a set of complicated inspections, including ID checks, body temperature tests, health code scanning, and vaccine passport scrutiny. Those rules come as authorities have ordered schools to begin winter break almost 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Similarly harsh orders are also popping up elsewhere. In a village within the northeastern province of Liaoning, the local Communist Party chairperson's latest announcement came as a shock to residents. As a warning to those who refuse to stay inside, he urged the village leaders to take extreme action, saying village cadres get some pickaxes handles and kill whoever goes outside. Another announcement elsewhere saw a similar response. From today on, couples must sleep on separate beds, no kissing, no hugging. That's according to a local community in Guangdong. That province, too, is adopting some rather strict controls. Authorities there will reportedly seal an entire residential apartment building shut if just one tenant is found to have come in contact with the virus. And in some cases, health workers are even demanding information about residents' overseas relatives. Those people are then advised not to return to China and told that doing so is at their own risk. In Zhuhai City, part of Guangzhou province, mass testing orders are out for 2.5 million residents. Starting last Friday, officials said nobody should be left untested. The same day, the city also canceled all flights to Beijing. Shenzhen City is likewise taking action. A neighbor to Hong Kong, officials there require negative test results taken within 48 hours for anyone looking to exit the area. A blind date gone viral after it lasted longer than anticipated. One woman found herself stuck in her date's home after abrupt lockdown orders halted movement in the city. Here's more on how the home-cooked dinner turned into a days-long retreat.
An unexpected ending to a blind date in China. A Chinese woman named Miss Wang became an overnight sensation on social media after posting videos about the days-long first date. The man she was set up with lives in the central Chinese city of Zhengzhou. Touting his cooking skills, he had invited her over for dinner one Sunday evening. After a few hours spent getting to know each other, Wang was about to head home for the night when a local notice changed her plans. Authorities had ordered strict stay-at-home orders for the area during their meal, as a recent virus outbreak sent thousands into quarantine and paralyzed part of the city, including her blind dates community. And with no one allowed to go outside, Wang found herself stuck at her blind date's home. She spent several days there, posting videos about her stay on Weibo, a popular Twitter-like social media platform. Her clips showed off her date's daily routine, cooking meals, doing house chores, and working at his desk. Before long, the posts went viral, prompting media coverage from both inside and outside China. Wang later took down the videos, saying they had caused some interruptions to her date's life. Many found the story full of hilarity, an unexpected shakeup for two strangers in their daily lives. But some social media comments touched on the bigger picture. Referring to the area's strict no-notice lockdown orders, one user wrote, "Ordinary citizens are treated like ants without a trace of respect." Zhengzhou City reported nearly 100 new cases as of Thursday. Officials shut down all non-essential businesses Tuesday and rolled out a second round of massive testing for the area's 12 million residents.
Before a Chinese city is put under lockdown, local authorities typically tell residents the food supply is sufficient. They say food will be delivered to each household and that there's no need to panic buy or stockpile supplies. But we've seen the consequences when people listen to the authorities. In one major city, Xi'an, many people are eating just one meal a day, waiting days or even weeks for the food delivery the authorities promised. So what does it look like when residents do not listen to the authorities and stockpile food at home? A resident from Tianjin City shows his storage room online with pride. He says his wife began creating a stockpile from time to time 2 years ago when their twins were born. And now her efforts have paid off as the city is under semi-lockdown due to Omicron. A restaurant's promotional campaign is a little too successful, and that's reason enough for Chinese authorities to clamp down. The China Consumers Association has initiated a boycott of American fast food chain KFC over its promotional material. Chinese state media criticized KFC earlier this week, saying it makes customers buy the meals like crazy and unnecessarily waste food. KFC started its promotion last week to celebrate the company's 35th year in China. Customers can collect dolls when buying some KFC set meals. Customers have to buy at least 6 meals if they want to collect all the dolls. The state media reported that one customer spent nearly $2,000 on over 100 set meals to collect the toys. The outlet calling KFC's promotion brainless. In 2020, the Chinese regime launched a campaign against food waste. It came out of growing concerns about food shortages during the pandemic. Netizens pointed out the biggest food waste likely comes from officials using public funds for banquets and not from private citizens using their own money to buy food. China's Evergrande is catching a break, getting bondholders' approval to delay some payments, and in turn avoiding what would have been its first default on domestic funds. Francis McGuire reports.
China Evergrande won approval to delay payments on one of its onshore bonds on Thursday, and that may have just helped the company avoid a messy outcome. Evergrande wanted more time for bond coupon and redemption payments to avoid a technical default, which would have complicated the company's politically sensitive restructuring. Evergrande is weighed down by $300 billion in liabilities, making it the world's most indebted real estate firm. It has so far met payments on the onshore bonds, which make up most of its debt. However, it has defaulted on some offshore bonds. Evergrande's woes are shared by other Chinese developers who have struggled with a liquidity squeeze. Many face defaults and credit rating downgrades due to curbs on borrowing. The World Bank has warned any severe downturn in the sector would be felt throughout China's economy. It said the country's developers' combined onshore and offshore liabilities total almost 30% of the country's GDP.
The onshore liabilities are the debts Evergrande owes to investors in China, and offshore liabilities are the debts the company owes to foreign investors. At the moment, Chinese authorities are carrying out the policy, prioritizing investors in the country. Now let's touch on another viewer question, asking about recent news videos showing Chinese authorities sealing residential buildings. Some have brought up a seemingly obvious point. Those who are locked inside can't be in two places at once. So who's filming these clips? Typically, workers in charge of the lockdown process are the ones capturing the scene, later posting it online to tout the Communist Party's supposed successes in controlling the pandemic. Some of these workers are state employees, while others are volunteers. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.